Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham. Might be over here. Doesn't matter. Not up there. My eyes are looking. Probably trying to look backward, actually. But anyway, can't do that. So I don't know why they're doing that. Anyway, it's been one of those kind of weeks. Yes, sort of like an average, after you've been here a while kind of week. You know, just none of it makes any sense. And everything's just kind of obviously not making sense. I mean, nothing is charming. It's when you're younger, things are charminger because it's like you don't know what to expect, but you don't have the same kind of expectations, I suppose. And there's probably some other reasons, or maybe the world's just uglier now. Just might be a fact. People are uglier, and it's the way it is. Might be true. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, could be that's just the reason. Just people suck. Lots suckier, lots stupider. They walk, more monkey-like. Just in every respect, they're just not as interesting as fellow inhabitants. I think there is some of that. Anyway. So, mostly been just thinking, same kind of ideas as this conflict between right and wrong, and the imbecility that somehow we can't tell the difference between right and wrong. The good guys and the bad guys, and so, you start, I have little clips of movies here and there, and you see some stuff, and it's, you think about it and you say, that doesn't make any sense, that doesn't make any sense, that doesn't make any sense. These stories of conquering evil, or conquering the thing come to get us, And, I'm sort of in this circumstance where I'm attempting to argue that, the human race sort of has it wrong. I guess we don't need this on here. See, well, that one's not so bad. So I'll get rid of that. There. Pictures are what they are. Yeah, they'll get better once we get to winter. Probably. Maybe. Possibly. Should be more of them. I mean, I'll have to eventually get the old pictures I took and put them into this pile and something like that. Or maybe I'll even do stuff that's relevant now and then. I do have plans to do more, can't even think of documentary style videos. But of course that requires planning and effort and work, and just haven't got the will for all of that yet. So working on it. My answer to everything is either whatever or working on it. I mean, it's a response, but it's probably just not good enough. I think I'll light a cigarette, then I'll have an no, I have 4 cigarettes left. I mean, I don't want to do this in the video. It's kind of impolite. Anyway, it's not as quick. Anyway, talking about it is just a horrible waste of time. So I could just go through a few stories, right? It's just because we're just arguing about people's narratives, their story about what life is, right? And I just keep making this argument that what life is a disgusting infestation of these little robots on the crust of the earth, and they have these disgusting habits of torturing and raping and pillaging, taking other animals' valuable energy and killing their babies and doing all kinds of just disgusting things to do this thing called win and survive and protect your little monsters. So there's more of your little monsters on the planet than there are the other kinds of little monsters, That's all that's really going on, and our brains are just a tool. They're just a weapon. They make us capable of setting traps and manipulating and, you know, playing the game. And yes, there are some experiences we have because of our physiology, our reward and punishment mechanism, where we actually feel like we're winning. We have some kind of glorious feeling and think that, yeah, we got it. But they're just so tiny amount of time that we spend in that glorious feeling. And we spend so much time in the drudgery feelings of either being trapped by the other participants, being manipulated and raped and pillaged, or doing the hard work of raping and pillaging, because sometimes it's a lot of work, this raping and pillaging. It requires you to put up sails on your boat and do this and do that. You know, it's a lot of work to go somewhere and steal all their stuff and all that kind of crap. So, yes, it's just mostly drudgery. And I'm making this argument in response to these pro-lifers who are just like, no, 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 it's all great. It's all great. We're accomplishing something. We're going somewhere. We're doing something. We're so special. We're so interesting. We're so wonderful. All our feelings are great, 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 great. Even when you feel like shit, you feel like wonderful. It's all wonderful, wonderful. Oh, you can't just make it. You can't make enough of these little feeling things because the experience of being a feeling thing is all so wonderful, wonderful. You know, it's just, and we're basically having a war, right? You know. Yeah, so far it's not much of a war, but it's a war nonetheless. An obvious dramatic conflict of perception. I perceive them to be Mengele-esque, Bundy-esque, Gacy-esque torturers, just disgusting creatures who torture other creatures for their own satisfaction, for some notion of glorifying their god or glorifying their kind or their race or whatever the frick they're glorifying, for the glory of, and they will accept any kind of attrition and mayhem, badness. And so, you know, from my perspective, yeah, good and bad is pretty obvious. Sort of like the stupid Ring movie, right? I mean, they made the villains slovenly, disgusting, slimy, dirty, mean. They just gave them every horrible feature possible to make it clear who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. You know, even though the good guys are sitting there, most of the peasants, most of the people are dirty and stupid and living kind of grungy lives. Even the king doesn't live very good. You know, nobody's got it great, you know. All kind of looks pretty smelly and cruddy. No glorious moments unless you think dancing on the table, drinking is a glorious moment. Yeah, not too much glory in there. A little bit of romance, a little bit, you know, pretty girls on horses and stuff. And, oh, pretty, pretty. Pretty girls and mist. Ooh, the mist woman. Ooh. You know, so you get a little bit of something, but you know, most of the movie is running and chasing and stabbing and, you know, all this work, you know, fighting your evil. So there's just this huge irony, right, is that these life lovers see us as the creatures, you know, these evil creatures trying to steal from them their wonderful free bliss, their harmless activity of producing living things so they can die, you know, so they can make them fat first. I saw some of that today. You know, I saw a little family walking by and kids were all fat. You know, they're 10 years old, 9 years old, 7, you know, 50 pounds overweight, and you're just like, oh, these are responsible parents. Way to go. You have a plan, no doubt. Pathetic. You know, it's just, you know, I mean, how can people think they're doing, I mean, it's so stupid. How do they think it's going to work out? It's not going to work out. It's just going to be a burden. spend the rest of their lives trying to lose 5 pounds when they need to lose 400. Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, yeah, shouldn't get distracted. Hard not to, though. So, but you can find just such huge plot flaws in all these stories, because the good and the evil, it's like Star Wars. You know, the Empire does seem really clean. All the people seem pretty intellectual. You know, everything seems to work really good. You know, big functional spaceships and stuff, lots of gadgets and stuff. It all seems to work pretty good. And somehow they're the bad guys, right? And these other people, little furry things and yodels and all kinds of other stuff, are somehow they're being oppressed. We don't even understand how exactly they're being oppressed. Except for the fact that they're being rebels. That is, they're trying to shoot the Empire, and the Empire says, we're not going to let you do that. But we really don't know what crime the Empire causes otherwise. You know, and if you don't shoot at the Empire, the Empire, does the Empire cause you any trouble? We get no vision of that. You know, the slave planets or anything. We have no idea, you know, where all this harm is. So you have like a perfect Borg fighting this freedom fighters, and the freedom to do what? You know, again, freedom to live on dirty, dusty planets where, you know, you hate your life. Oh, yeah, can't lose that. Oh, horror, horror. So that doesn't make any sense. And then there's that Interstellar movie, you know, which is sort of a battle. Like, it's a battle against blight, right? A stupid blight. And that's just so funny. Yeah, you know, and here we are. Must preserve life. We must save our life so much that we'll sit there and take little embryos and send them off to some other planet to spend generations trying to make it into something habitable. I mean, it'll be stark and horrid, cold or something. I mean, it'll be nasty as hell. You'll all be living in little boxes. You know, little 400 to a unit kind of thing or something. Just terrible overcrowding, and just, you can imagine how stinky and horrible it would be. And do that for hundreds of years, right? It's going to take hundreds of years before you're going to be able to turn your planet into anything. And that makes sense to these people. We must preserve the struggle to win over death, which no one's ever accomplished. So even though nobody's done it in 40 billion tries, just keep fighting. Yeah, keep doing it, keep failing. Yeah. But, you know, and the big irony is that oh yeah, we have the technology to send our seed through wormholes. We have the technology to make the Empire State Building float to Saturn and save 4,000 people. Yeah, fuck the other 6 billion, you know, which is ironic in itself. You know, Plan A, save a tiny percentage of the human race, you know, versus Plan B, put our seed in the wormhole to live next to a black hole. Brilliant. I mean, this can't make any sense. And you're saying, how can people see? How can people feel like they're on the right side? They're rooting for the right side. I mean, they're clearly rooting for the wrong side. They're rooting for imbeciles and dupes, and and then I haven't even touched on the whole religious thing for that's which really gets moronic. So that's sort of the context of this. What I've been thinking this week. It's similar. It's this similar train of the thoughts about how to fight this battle of understanding. And so much of it is dependent on these, this stupid underlying. These first impressions end up being the lasting impressions, and that's just so annoying. That's really what you're always fighting, is what side you grew up on. And I can't deny, you know, I didn't grow up on the oh, life is so cool, you know, side. I grew up on the this looks suspicious to me. It looked all very suspicious to me at minimum. I wasn't at all certain I was caught up in something that was going to be fun. I was fairly certain from every appearances that it looked like this could go wrong in so many different ways, and you know, I could spend decades, you know, wage slave and all of those kinds of things, and you know, it looked pretty scary, you know, and everybody's hyping it up like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great fun, and you find out, no, it's not really any fun. I mean, they sell you on going to school, and you go to school and you just find out this is horrible. It's like jail. It's literally jail. You have no freedom. You have to do what they say when they say you do it. You have to eat when they say you eat. You sleep when you say they sleep. You work when you say, you know, absolutely. It couldn't be, you know, what's the difference between that and prison? Nothing. And they're saying you're having fun. You're having fun in prison. I am. I wasn't. I didn't have that impression that I was having fun in prison. But some do. They fall for it and they say, oh yeah, we love prison. Yeah, prison's cool. No. And then become prison defenders for the rest of their life. Somehow. I mean, I'm just saying the sides are kind of chosen by those very personal, emotional encounters with things. And it's kind of like why people love dogs or like cats, or, you know, it really doesn't have too much to do with making any kind of logical evaluation. It just has to do with circumstantial evaluations, you know, your personal contact kind of thing, the kind of people you've hung up with, and, you know, whose cat you met and whose dog you met, and have a lot to do with it. And so it's just personal, kind of arbitrary. Doesn't have anything to do with facts or anything. And you know, that's it's sort of an important thing to fight against, is any of us having conversations or debates or discussions about reality without being really conscious of the fact that we have all of these predilections to prejudice, and that we're just really going to tell stories, you know, defending bullshit, and you know, it's going to be quote mining. We're going to quote mine reality and personal experiences and whatever we can find to present, you know, this a biased argument, and we're not really seeking to inform each other or educate each other. Everybody just kind of turns into a propagandist, trying to badger the other side. What's a better word for that? I mean, some of this is necessary. I mean, we do have some obligation to be able to defend our lives, defend what we're defending, and we should have to do that. But it's more about what we do as aggressors, like the silly religious people who try to turn their religion into a science or something, than we do as defenders. I mean, their defense should be honest, and they should just say, I'm addicted to it, I need it, I'm a superstitious kook now, and I really can't, I'm scared to offend the boogeyman guy thingy. You know, or just be honest about how it's just got them psychologically because they grew up in it, and that they don't have any good reason to think Christianity is any better than Islam. There's no facts that say that. And, you know, the only thing saying that is your personal prejudice because your mother was white. You like white people or something. I mean, it's that stupid. Yeah, it is really all that stupid. And so, in a sense, there's a bit of futility and attempting to do this grounded, logical, let's talk about what it is to be a human being, where we came from, what the whole, how the mechanism has designed us, the evolution, and understand our weaknesses, and understand the strength of our intelligence, that we can do this very thing I just said, where we can see our weaknesses. You know, like if we were a car, we can sense, you know, the tire pressure, and we can sense, you know, we can actually do something about our performance, in the sense that we can have mechanisms, programs that run, that make us more effective in not going down dead ends, avoiding dirt roads, cul-de-sacs, you know, avoiding things that are going to waste our time, things that are going to be unfruitful as memes or axioms or statements of facts to live by, ways to prevent being on the wrong side in the war. Our brain has some mechanisms that will enable us to say, yeah, I can figure out I'm on the wrong side. Yeah, you know, I'm not for this, you know, I'm for something, maybe not that on that side either, but maybe I'm for something over there somewhere. But let's not pretend I'm for what these idiots are for. You know. And so, you know, we can do these evaluations, and we can fight against our prejudices and our flawed, incomplete knowledge. We can at least recognize when we have such a thing, and when we have very so this comes up in the physics stuff a lot, you know, because there's a lot of in science, they accept a lot of things on very little evidence. It'll be a tiny little spark of evidence, and they'll tell a whole big story. So they'll have a whole elaborate story about how, you know, you know, hundreds of events and thousands of people, and all they heard was a bird go peep. You know, they hear a peep, and they make up this whole story related to, you know, what happened because of the peep, and how it made that guy turn his neck too fast, and he got a stiff neck, and so he went to the doctor, and he showed up a half hour too early, and the doctor was banging the nurse on the table, and yeah, he didn't think it was very ethical to be doing that. And you know, you can make up this whole bullshit story, and you know, all you got for evidence is, yeah, a bird. So none of this crap happened. I mean, it's just stuff you can't imagine. So we have an imagination, and people can imagine things, so they imagine all kinds of solutions to the life problem, like a singularity, or we can go back to Eden, or we can reconstruct ourselves so we're not need machines and we're just happy, or we, you know, and they're just stories. They don't have any evidence to back them up. There's no like thoughtful, logical process that leads to the conclusion. They just want the conclusion, which is happy. They don't want to have to pay for it, so they don't want to do worky, and you know, so they just make up magical solutions. And this is the kind of stuff you really have to avoid, is this tendency to believe in crap. You know, it's just crap. So, like I would say, religion is just so, you know, you should be honest. You should be able to honestly communicate with people and say, look, I mean, you do understand. I mean, it's as bad as believing in the three bears. I mean, there's just as much evidence of God as there is the three bears existed in some point in history. The evidence is horrible that any of this stuff happened the way they say it happened, and the evidence pointing against it is multi-level and dimensional. I mean, in that it's logical evidence, and that there's huge contradictions in the silly stories. I mean, the believers who turn on the Savior even though they've watched the Savior raise the dead. Somehow that didn't impress them. Like the followers of Moses, they watched Moses part the sea and kill the Egyptians, and a few years later they're back to whoring and making golden bulls and stuff. And you're saying that doesn't make any sense. That story it couldn't have happened that way. You know, no way. So you know these stories are just made up. And here you are so aggressively defending this crap as a premise for understanding all of existence in the envelope of this we are here to please God's narrative. We are to live God's narrative, whatever that narrative is. I mean, again, a narrative that doesn't even make any sense. I mean, he's basically cursing the functions he gave us, cursing our curiosity, our lack of will to be obedient, our obvious alpha tendency, our competitiveness. All these features we have, and he's basically saying those are crimes. You're not allowed to feel those things and act on those things. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. I made you to do something, and then I curse you. I'll send you to hell if you do it. It's that bad. It's like he might as well just send us to hell for going poo. I mean, he gives us an anus, gives us the process, and then sends us to hell for using it. Just doesn't make any sense. It's a terrible story. And they're so aggressive in defending it, not only as a truth, like somehow it makes sense when it makes no sense, but that somehow I should feel good about it. Like somehow I should wish for that. Oh, I wish God was real. Why would I wish for this crazy psychotic ogre? This egomaniacal kook. Why would I wish to go bow? I don't wish to go be a bower. I don't, if I had a kid, I wouldn't say, oh yeah, I'm going to raise him to be a bower. He's going to bow to things. No. Well, you wouldn't want that for your dog. There's no dignity in this. And yes, they're so aggressive, so emphatic, so, just incapable of questioning. And mostly because they have some little kid notion in their head of step on a crack, break your mother's back. I mean, they're just afraid of their superstition. They're afraid of the boogeyman that doesn't exist. Their own boogeyman. The thing that they're supposed to be, supposed to be giving them some endearing, wonderful, happy feeling. And yet they're scared to death of it. They can't even figure out how, that might be evidence how this story really is just crap used to manipulate people, especially children. And that maybe we ought to let this go, especially when we grow up and we're not kids anymore. We shouldn't believe in the fairy stories anymore. I mean, how many of them did you really believe in? Did you really believe, oh yeah, there's fairy godmothers and talking crickets and they can make pumpkins and do things, and did you believe any of that? Come on. So, yeah, so that's fundamentally the task is you have to somehow get to a foundation that's lower, that's deeper, that's more rudimentary and elemental to our humanness. So you can have a conversation from that clean place before things get so dirty. And then you can just keep walking one step at a time with somebody else and see that, look, there's no need for those stories. This is the story. Here, this is the truth, the facts. This is where the evidence points. We're complex, feeling, psychological organisms, and we are high maintenance, and we're not getting low maintenance. We're getting higher maintenance, and I mean, virtual reality might do something to fix some of that. But I mean, the truth is, we're becoming higher maintenance. We're not lower maintenance. We're becoming higher and higher maintenance, and it's harder and harder to create a stimulating enough environment because we do have so much more knowledge, and we're not just walking through the world as children all the time like they did in the past, and we're not just going crisis to crisis. Now that's another psychological thing to talk about, is that some people live their life like that when they choose to have children. Is essentially what they're saying is I just want to be tugged by those reins, the reins of constant potential disaster and upset, and I need something to push me through my life, and the push will be the crisis of caretaker, taking care of the little bomblets that could blow up at any moment, because they don't have any. They're not telling any better Jedi story for themselves, so they sort of can't say they're uncompetitive. They're obviously highly competitive parents, but yeah, it's like they've lost that make it out of yourself kind of notion. Win your gold medal, and now they're sort of playing a team sport. Like, maybe I can win by being part of a team of winning kids or something. Some kind of other game they're playing, where they've decided that life isn't a single player game, when in so many respects it kind of obviously is. You're only going to feel your pain and your pleasure. Alright, that is sort of a sidetrack, but it always goes back to these psychological obstacles. So that's another one of those things you have to get to people before they've been programmed, to be an egg layer, to just be obedient to being what nature calls you to be, and that your big brain is not for the purpose of defining goals. It's just for the purpose of being assigned the function and you performing the function. And clearly having a lot of understanding and thoughtfulness isn't going to make you very good as a parent, in the sense you're not going to enjoy it, because the more you know about how dangerous things are, the more you know how many traps there are for your kids, how many things you need to control, or things could go very bad, how easy it is to make catastrophic mistakes. Yes, they won't be obviously catastrophic. They will be in 30 years. You'll make a mistake now, and in 30 years your kid will pay for it. That kind of stuff. So the more intelligent, the more thoughtful, the more time you've spent thinking about it, thinking about the stories and possible stories, the more you're going to run into a realization that most of these stories can go very dystopic. I don't even want the good guys to win because their life sucks. It's not worth it. Yeah, and certainly from my perspective, that's what I see. I see there's just no. It's viscerally repugnant to imagine being birthed to these people, in terms of how humiliating, it would be to be trapped in that kind of dull, mindless, Borgy animal behavior. And again, it's not even it's not a real animal. It's this controlled animal, this horse, you know, with a bit in its mouth and reins controlling it. They have all that gear, which makes it even worse. I mean, it's bad enough being controlled by the fact that you are a polar bear, for example, and you have a certain biology, construction, and yes, you're not going to do too good on the desert. You know, there's certain things, limitations, because you're a polar bear, and you have to live with those limitations. But it's a lot worse. You know, if you're a polar bear on a stick, you know, and you only get to do whatever the stick, you know, maker allows you to do. You know, the god. So, where else is there to go? This is just the stuff that goes through my head, so that's all. I'm just, it's just thoughts relevant to the fact of the dichotomy stuff, the obvious problems of conflict resolution. It's obviously a system, you know, it's a kind of game, and you have to play the game of resolution a certain way to come up with a good result. So that's part of it. How do you find the quickest, easiest solution to the fact that you have, you know, dirty people on this side and dirtier people on this side, you know, fighting a war. And then fighting in the sense of believing kind of sincerely that you know, there is a right and a wrong, in the sense that there is a smart and a stupid, and there's well, you know, that's sort of another, you know, it just occurred to me again. I am often say things like, I'm angrier at smart people than I am dumb people. Now, even though dumb people are the whole cause of the problem, the smart people aren't doing anything about it. So that's sort of that piece of poetry that somebody wrote where they said something like, you know, the worst scumbag is the scumbag who, when seeing atrocity, does nothing. So the smart people, the fact that they haven't taken control of this bus or done anything to fix the problem, makes them the bigger villain in a way. So it's like I can't really make the argument that this is a battle between intelligence and ignorance, because it goes deeper, because even the intelligent are controlled by their self-interest and their personal position and their prejudices, and they're not really being all that intelligent. So I guess it's stupid, and it's dumber and dumber, right? So that's really the problem. There's only two sides relevant, and you know, the game is how do I resolve both of those things into something like reasonable? You know, how do you elevate dumb or dumber to reasonable? How do you get reasonable to win the war when most of the people in the war aren't reasonable? You know, it's a very small little group reasonable, willing to be reasonable even. It's like, that's really all you have to be, is willing to try, because reason really is so easy. It's just the 2 + 2 thing. It doesn't take much work to merely admit, you know, it's not frightening to admit that it's not good enough. You know, that if you're going to defend something, you have to defend something that's worthy of defense, and that the game we're playing, the costs are way too high, the negatives are just way too high, and it just can't be defended. It's just not good enough. Cool. Mouse is moving without me moving it. Ghost. It's God. Pointing to the icon of red, anger. No. But really, that's what people are, really that superstitious. I mean, it's really, people are just controlled by these little feelings of how they were raised to be, to be pulled by these stories, emotionally controlled by notions. But that's the other thing. So another thing, a thought comes to mind, right? I started thinking about the idea, and I started saying, well, yeah, but people are, generally speaking, they should be raised with these affirmative values, honesty, decency, no, don't be duplicitous, don't be a liar. And yet, everybody's just glorifying nihilism and take whatever you can, get whatever you can, what's in it for me. And they're finding trivial reasons. They'll defend liars for trivial reasons, which is really amazing. I mean, it makes you wonder. It makes me wonder. How did it get that bad? That it was bad enough when their religion was something good, but they're not even fighting for a good religion anymore. I mean, the religion now is a pretty sick and pitiful. My kind better than your kind of, it's a really ugly religion. And doesn't look at all like the good, clean, white hat, white shirt people. It's definitely the nasties. And they're sort of proud to be on the side of the nasties, the cheaters. Yuck. So, I mean, that just makes it that much worse, is that you really have to go pretty deep to sit there and figure out. I mean, that has to be a flaw that's got to be so close to the source of your programming, the kernel, when you can make rationalizations and excuses to be a cheater, and a liar, and a thief. Those are really kind of obvious. You just don't do that. That's just wrong. Stealing the candy from the baby kind of thing. It's just, ooh. But again, like I say, there's hard evidence that there's an awful lot of people who are just fine accepting that. Jeez. Sorry, this gets harder. And the more you think about how much there is to get done in terms of how hard it is to get to some clean place where you can actually start building, some place that isn't muddy, that isn't a swamp, and where we can start laying a foundation for this new road to the truth, because you really can't get there from the middle of the quicksand, I don't think. The middle of the chaos, the middle of the conflict. You can't do it on War Day, when you're in your suits flinging arrows. You're not going to be able to do it from there. It has to happen in some other way where you encounter each other, where you don't have, your bows stretched. And even that's hard to imagine, that common ground, because it's almost like Teletubby. It's almost like you have to go back to AstroTurf, hopping bunny, laughing baby, porridge. You almost have to go back to something so simple, to find common. And even that's really difficult, because again, I'm not going to, and the laughy baby thing is going to really irritate me. Yeah, I mean, the rabbit's okay. Yeah, but they're fat. So that's kind of, yeah. See, so it's really hard to find the place to start from, to say, this is where we went different roads, and here's the obvious reasons why these roads this shouldn't have happened. Because there is a reasonable path and an unreasonable path. And believing in the three bears is unreasonable. Believing in Goldilocks is unreasonable. Well, same difference. Little Red Riding Hood, Bugs Bunny, whatever. The Boogeyman, Sasquatch, whatever. That's wrong. That's wrong roading. And it's just it's clearly demonstrable with evidence that you should never have taken those roads. And yes, now that you've taken them, yes, now you're wearing the uniform of that wrong road. You've joined that club, and you like the uniform. I understand that. You're used to it. You had it custom fitted to you, and you know it fits really good. But it's the wrong uniform. It's bullshit. You've ruined your brain. You've poured salt in it or whatever. You've corrupted its capacity to do anything good, because you can't see the difference between white and black. You can't see the difference between right and wrong because of that stupid turn you took somewhere. So I know that's the truth of it. I mean, I know it's just that simple. And I know that most of those turns happened, like in any person I'm arguing with. I know the wrong turn happened way back then. You know, it happened back there where they gave up. You know, where they became one of them. You know, they put the uniform on. And, you know, and so that you have to just understand that it's going to be more about their psychology and their habits than it's going to be about a rational argument. And I guess I would still argue it's still going to be a rational argument that's going to enable them to understand that they're psychotic. Their psychology is shit. That they are selfish and greedy and conniving and scheming. And they're doing all of that stuff because they never learned the value that's in all these other vessels that are moving about around them. And that they're really just seeing everything as vehicles to their gratification. You know, like their dinner with the bones in it. Rather than what it really is. Alright, that's sort of getting to the end of this. I mean, that just reminded me that somebody is desperate to for me to make voice my opinion on Jordan Peterson's meat diet or something. And as if there's some rational argument, which there isn't. Even if we were Tyrannosauruses, a crocodile, overtly built to consume flesh, it would still be wrong. Okay, it would still be an ugly, nasty thing to do. It would still be unethical. So even if we were built to do it, we could rationally understand how, oh, this is a horrible thing to be. I mean, if intelligence first arose in an assassin bug or even a spider, you don't think the spider could say honestly, oh, this is I'm designed to horribly, I'm just built to be a terrible thing. I just go out and molest things and kill them in horrible ways and, you know, torture them. That's just awful. I got to find some other way to live. I can't be living that. I got to write a different kind of story where I can still be satisfied, but I don't have to do any of that crap. So that's the first obvious argument, that even if we were designed to eat meat, it's wrong. Obviously wrong. Obviously. Stealing other people's stuff is wrong. Stealing is wrong. Jordan Peterson can't figure that out. He's an idiot. And he should be eaten by aliens. By his own ethics. I guess that would be appropriate. Tortured and eaten. Because he thinks that's what smart things should do to dumb things, is eat them. Okay. It's stupid. So I'm just pointing out. Now, the facts are the real facts, not the made-up ones. The facts are, we're not the tyrannosauruses, we're not crocodiles, we're not great white sharks, we're not any of those kind of things. We're clearly descendant from organisms that were vegetarian, substantially, 90%, 99%. No doubt about it. We can't digest raw meat, can't chew it, can't even rip the flesh, we can't even rip the hair off of something without maybe breaking whatever crappy teeth we would have anyway. Just can't do it. We can't get any nutrients out of it because we can't massacate it enough to make it even digestible. And it just go right through you. You won't get any value out of it. The calories will be wasted. When steak tartare first was introduced in America, that is raw beef, it was introduced as a dietary plan. It was given to a fat guy to lose weight. Okay, not to feed him, not to nurture him, but to make sure everything he ate went right through him. So there's just no evidence at all, zero evidence, that we ate raw meat. Raw meat is not tasty. There's no raw thing you can mention. People swallow oysters. They don't really chew them. There's no raw thing, raw animal, that tastes good to humans. It's quite obvious that there's no connection evolutionarily that makes us thirsty for blood. We don't want to pick up a glass of blood and drink it. It's just not the truth. It has to be cooked. All right, it has to be processed into something we like, and that's a circumstance. Okay, so that's a fact. It sweetens it and makes it more flavorful if you cook it, and it also softens it, breaks down the protein so we can digest it. So with fire, we can eat meat. So the truth is, we're not biologically made to do it. Yes, through technology, we can make it edible and enjoyable. How does that make it right? It still doesn't. It's still wrong. And on top of that, there's no real reason to think that it's intrinsically healthy. So what we do know is there's a huge relationship between how you cook proteins, because they're carcinogenic. And then you have all the hormones and all the other stuff that goes with meat, all the bacterias, all the other stuff that overtly kills people every year. 10,000 people die every year just from food poisoning, and maybe a little bit more than that. Septic meat. So, it's obviously damaging your life expectancy and your health. There's just no denying the connections between those diets and heart disease and all this other stuff. So the statistical evidence, as far as I've ever seen, the surveys with the most people in them ever conducted demonstrate about a 10-year difference in life expectancy. You'll live 10 years longer if you don't bother doing the meat thing every day. Just the truth. That's a simple, factual story, and yet people will just keep making up these fake stories about how human beings ran across the prairie and took down gazelles and ate their flesh, and just insane stories that we were somehow made to do this, that we somehow have some great skill at it, when we didn't acquire any of that until relatively recently in our history. And clearly we've adapted to it. Some cultures, up in the Great North and such, all they eat is meat. They're adapted to it genetically, and that can happen over a few thousand years. But that doesn't make it right, and it doesn't mean they're going to live healthy either. They're not known to live 100 years, so they haven't gotten over that stumbling block. But what's the point of the argument? I just mean, where is there even a glimmer of a set of facts that would in some way defend the notion that humans have some reason, to be harassing other animals for their flesh? There just isn't any. Beyond the fact that it has now become convenient, because you can feed a lot of people by stealing, by raping and pillaging, by stealing the life and the welfare of other organisms. Well, whatever. Didn't really want to get on that subject. I really don't want, I mean, the arguments have been made, and people are deaf to them. There's always, that's what you can say. They're deaf. They're deaf to the truth. Again, I just can't see how they can even. Why do they even sustain the argument? Just say, I'm addicted to meat. I like it. I want to keep eating it. I don't like potato chips as much as I like, chicken wings. Whatever the bullshit is. Just say you got to do it. Fine. But don't pretend, that it's either the logically defensible thing to be doing, or that you have some sort of evidence that it's the nature of from our very soul, we're meat eaters, or any of that. Quit making up stories defending it. Why don't you just admit you have a bad habit, and you don't have enough guts to fix it, and quit lying that there's anything else to the story except your failure. So anyway, so much annoying stuff. Oh, look like girl legs. Anyway, it's so much of life is circumstantial. And it's kind of interesting with pictures, because you take a picture and you say, oh shit, I look pretty good there. And another picture, holy, how could I even, why do we even go outside if that's what I look like? And it's, they're just circumstantial reasons why one looks incredibly goofy and one looks okay, pretty good. And there's no good reasons. There's just these circumstantial reasons. Environmental reasons, which angle the camera was at, some kind of reason that wasn't anything to do with purpose or have anything to do with you. And that's sort of what makes this sort of interesting in the sense that that's sort of what I'm arguing here, is that we become on these different sides, not because we did a nice averaging or something, or we analyzed it in fair light. It's just because I grew up in a closet, a darker place than you grew up or something, and I had interactions with people that were different than the ones you had, and so I ended up with these negative associations, you ended up with these excessively positive ones, and then we can have this argument about who's too excessive, who's it doesn't really matter where you have ended up. It just matters on what can be logically defended, what can be defended as a position. And I guess what I'm arguing is optimism can't be defended. This notion that you're winning can't be defended. The fairy tales about all these wonderful outcomes can't be defended. The reality is this infestation on Earth will be killed by the blight or whatever the thing is that's going to come along and kill it, but it's going to die here. And it's just going to do it badly. And you're just sentencing some generation to have to endure the bad death. And in between those times, nothing really new is going to happen. You're just going to keep grinding people up in life traumas. Lots of tears will be shed. Lots of diarrhea pooed. And there won't be anything to show for it. That one's not bad. Rediker. Not too bad. See, a little bummy. Too bony. But anyway, irrelevant to most things. So I think that's enough. Yeah, made it 59 minutes. Just about right. So, sorry I was out of frame really, but it doesn't really matter, right? I'll work on all this stuff. Keep saying that's right, that's my line. whatever. And yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm really not being totally dishonest. This is working, because that's the catch of it. It's such a delicate thing. It's like taking a bomb apart or something, and you really kind of got to get your feel of what, before you cut that wire. If you're cutting the right wire, it's probably a better analogy. There's quite a bit of investment in effort, and you really have to invest it in the right direction. It's like you're knocking a building down. No point in swinging the ball, sideways or something. You really do have to hit the thing in the right place. So you don't want to be wasting too much gas, waving it around, missing. Anyway, something like that. Okay, so till the next time, when I will either be doing something different or talking about some more how I'm working on. Yeah, any day now. Something like that. Perspective. Just, yeah, you have to kind of just, it's like building the snowball before you throw it. You gotta construct it. I'm still constructing. Okay, enough now. So, till the next time. Such. Thanks to the people. You know who you are, people. And such. And so forth and whatnot.